Hello, my name is Mark Gibson, and you're listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, a weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. So good morning, and you're very welcome to today's Signpost webinar. Today we'll be discussing a new initiative led by the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. From the 1st of September, farmers are going to be required or have been required to be registered as a professional fertiliser end user with the department if they want to purchase fertiliser. So what are the implications for farmers and the wider agri-food industry? To tell us more, we're delighted to be joined this morning by Dr. Finbarr O'Regan, who's an agricultural inspector with the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. Finbarr, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mark. Good to be here. Always good to get the message out on these things.
Yes. Well, we have an audience that's always keen to hear from the latest on the Department of Agriculture, particularly when it's new initiatives like this, where it does have an impact on not just farmers but the wider industry as well. Pat, good morning to you. How are you today?
Great. Sunny southeast again.
Oh, goodness. Right. Okay. Well, we have a bit of sun here in the west today. The leaves are starting to turn, though, so it is a sign winter is on the way for sure. So Finbarr, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the work you're doing. You're based in the feed, fertilizer and poultry unit within the department. What's the nature of your work there?
So most of my work is I'm working on fertilizer almost exclusively. So we do the sampling of fertilizers across the country, testing on that. We go out to site on that as well. We would be involved in the new EU legislation. So we'd be in Brussels for some of that as well. And I suppose a big part of I've only moved into this section at the start of last year, when people started to care about fertilizer. So it was a good time to move in. So a big part of the time has been taken up with the National Fertiliser Database, I suppose, in conjunction with nitrates, and a huge amount of work from the IT section as well as ourselves. So there's a lot of work has gone into this over the last couple of years.
It has been a huge project, all right. Just go back for a moment. You mentioned there about testing fertilizers. What sort of things are you looking out for when you're testing fertilizers?
We're really just looking at the nutrient content, the NPK, and we would also test the inhibitor content on those inhibited products as well. So we do that testing, and then we follow up if there's any issue. But it's amazing to me how tight how tight the specification is for fertilizers when you consider the way it's put together. Sometimes it's quite strict.
Yeah, very good. Well, look, it's good to know that there's accurate product going out onto fields. So, Finbarr, you have a presentation for us and a few videos, I think, that you're going to share as well, that explain a little bit more about the fertilizer register.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through this. It should be reasonably quick. There's quite a lot of slides, but a lot of them are to do with screenshots in ag food of how to go about doing some of the registration and the declaration of closing stock. And then I'm just going to share a video. There's several videos up on the website, but I'm just going to share one of them because I think I would say that there's been huge buy-in in this. So in terms of registrations, and I will go through that later. The minister himself has commended the farming community, I think, on their buy-in into this. So there's 111,000 odd farmers have registered out of an estimated 129,000. So that's pretty good at this stage, and there's a couple of weeks still to go. So that's good, and it's very good for us after all the work that's gone into this, that people are buying into it, and that it's working so well. So just the aim of the database is to provide accurate tracking of sales throughout the supply chain. So I suppose people mentioned the derogation in relation to this, that we need more accurate data if we're going to go back and look for. I know we lost some, but if we want to maintain a derogation, then we would need this type of data. So the database is part of that, and it's a very important part of that. At the moment, you see, we're looking at sales by the major importers into the system, really. So it's not as accurate as it could be. So this will be an improvement. So it's a more realistic picture of where fertilizer is applied to land, and sharing data with industry and farmers. industry will have access. Anything they upload onto the system. So if you're a co-op and you upload onto the system, you will have access to that. You will be able to see that. There will be downloadable reports. They haven't been set up yet, but we're working on those at the moment, but they take a bit of time. And also farmers will be able to see on screen in ag food any data relating to them. So sales that have been entered by their local co-op or merchant to them. They'll have sight of that. Just to say that the system, the data for September, October, November is not required until mid-December. So it'll be the middle of December before anything goes up on that system. But then following on from that, it's every month. So January or December data will go in the middle of January. January data will be in the middle of February from the co-ops and the merchants. Legal requirements. So from the 1st of September, as Mark mentioned, and just to say, because I sometimes forget, this includes lime as well. Lime is covered under the definition of fertilizer in Irish legislation, so the lime is also covered. So we will get some very useful information from this once we get it up and running. Once we have a full year's worth of data, so it'll be interesting to see what we get this time next year. Imports of fertilizer into the state must be notified within 72 hours. So we have quite a few notifications of imports already. That includes farmers. If you're buying outside the state, you have 3 days to put that information into the system under your herd number. And then data on fertilizer transactions will be recorded by the fertilizer economic operators. And I suppose down at the ploughing, we had quite a few people asking questions and worrying about having to tick a box or do something with regard to their purchases during the year. That's not the case. The co-op or merchant that's selling to you will enter that information. You just need to provide your herd number, and that data will go up on the system. So key dates, the 14th of September, that's the closing stock date. Now that's the date that's relevant for what did you have on your farm on, at a minute to midnight on the 14th of September. You have until the 15th of October to enter that information. So that's for farmers. And I suppose the middle of the month date is to do with nitrates. You'd all be well familiar with that. The 30th of September then is the date for fertilizer economic operators to declare closing stocks, and they have until the 15th of October to do that as well. The 15th of December then, as I've mentioned, is when economic operators must submit the September, October and November data. And I suppose the other thing to remember is this data is about dispatch. We had some queries in about someone forward buying fertilizer, but it's really only when the fertilizer physically lands on your farm that it goes into this system. And then the 15th of January is the date by which fertilizer economic operators must submit December data. And then it's required monthly after that. So the 15th of each month you're entering, the co-ops and merchants will enter data for the previous month. So we'll be that few weeks behind. Registrations, and I suppose this is the bit that the minister was very happy with farmers for their buy-in into it. So we have 111,000 registered already. The closing stock declarations are at 27,000. So that's something. There's 2 more weeks to go on that. So we're hoping that will increase hugely over the next couple of weeks. And even if you have nil stock, no stock on farm, that needs to be declared. It's again, I'll go through it in the end, and that's the video I'll show. We'll go through closing stocks as well. We will have paper forms for farmers that do not have access to computers. And there will be inspections to verify compliance. I suppose the paper forms thing, we're just saying to farmers, we've had a few calls. We'll send out paper copies to them. They can get back to us. So they seem to be okay with that. Not huge numbers as yet, but if there are people with issues like that, they can contact us. So requirements. Just to be clear on the fertilizer suppliers, because again, some farmers were concerned about the amount of work involved for them. And just to say that farmers, once they're registered, for the most part, unless they're importing or transferring farm to farm, they will only have to enter closing stock at the end of each year. That's their one interaction, like I said, unless they're importing or transferring to another farm. So all fertilizer economic operators and line producers will have to register. They'll be given a unique identifier at that stage, and then they'll be able to submit transactions to the department and their closing stock as well on the 30th of September to be declared by the 15th of October. So the data is fertilizer dispatched, who it was dispatched to, when it was dispatched, and what product. So there'll be a unique identifier for the merchant involved. There'll be a product ID from the catalogue. And I suppose the catalogue, there's a bulk or bag option, which gives a lot of generic products. And I suppose that was agreed with the co-ops and the merchants that that was the most reasonable way to go about it. So we did enter that. And the catalogue, just to say as well, will be updated regularly over the coming weeks to ensure that we get all the products in that are needed. There'll be a unique identifier for the customer. In the case of farmers, that's the herd number. But for other professional end users, say like landscapers, they'll register and we'll issue them with a number that they can use when they're buying fertilizer as well. The quantity in tons, the dispatch date, and the transaction type. Obviously, if there's fertilizer that a farmer is not happy with and he wants to return, there is a function on the system that's taken off his record. So the methods of getting data to the department, and really this is ag food is what farmers will use for their closing stock. Smaller operators can use ag food. They can put it through manually in ag food, but there's also an API, which is an application programming interface. I'm no expert on this, but essentially it means that the co-op's computer system can link with ours so that they can upload the data through this system. And there's quite a few of them working on this at the moment. I think there's a few have signed up. There's a test system, and then there's the full system, which is operational. So a couple of companies have signed up to that as well, and there has been some data, I think, entered through the system on that. So then what I'd like to do is go through how a farmer registers, firstly as a professional fertilizer end user. So the farmer and agent, and I suppose again, we would like to thank agents because a huge number, as you'll see in a minute, a huge number of them have done this registration for their clients. So we're very happy with that as well. So to register as a professional fertilizer end user, you first log into Ag Food. You scroll down on the authorized applications and you'll get to National Fertiliser Database. Click on that. Then you'll see this screen and you have an actions thing here. There's a plus there that you click on, and this brings up the registration. So you tick that registration and then click submit. Click yes, and then you're done. To check your registration, when you go in, if it's not a plus here and it's 3 dots, that's a sign you've registered. So you click on the 3 dots, click on registration, and then you'll see that the registration was submitted on a particular date. So the registration, and I think in fairness to IT, they've been commended on the simplicity of the system that they have set up for this. And anyone we met at the ploughing was quite happy with that system. Registration as a fertilizer economic operator. So this comes up in 2 cases: if a farmer is transferring fertilizer to another farm or importing fertilizer from outside the state. This only needs to be done once. So the first time you do a transfer of fertilizer to another farm, or the first time you import fertilizer and you need to put in that transaction, that's it. You won't see this registration again after that, and you will have access to be able to do either of those transactions afterwards. So again, you're logging into Ag Food, go through the fertilizer database, you're clicking on the 3 dots again, and if you look at farm to farm transfer, then this message will come up about registration. Again, you tick the box and you will then be brought to this screen. So if you have a transaction to enter, you put in your own business ID is up here. You'll put in the business ID or herd number of the farm you're transferring to, the date, the product, and the quantity, and then you can submit that. Importing fertilizer directly from outside of Ireland onto your farm, it's the same thing. You need to register as a fertilizer economic operator. So again, you click on the three dots, direct imports for own use, registration, tick the box there, submit, yes, and then you'll be brought to this screen so you can record what you imported. So the date, the product, the quantity, and the country it was imported from. The next one, and I will show a video on this afterwards as well, is the closing stock, which will become the opening stock for the following year. So you can click on closing stock, highlight it down here, and then you have two options. Either I declare I have no closing stock, or I declare I have closing stock of at least one product. So I declare I have no closing stock. So you tick that, and then click on the declare closing stock. And if you're happy with that, then you click yes. And then closing stocks, the user declared there was no closing stock on the 14th of the 9th, 2023. So that's done. So when you have no closing stock, that's how straightforward it is. It's just a few clicks.
And Finbarr, while you're on that screen, we did have a question just a moment there ago asking whether you can make any changes to that declaration afterwards, or is that if you made a mistake, let's say when you're declaring your closing stocks?
No, you can't, and I suppose that's why IT put in this kind of declare it and are you sure button afterwards as well, so that you can see what you're putting in. But what you can do is contact us. We can withdraw what you've entered, and you can re-enter the correct information. And we did have a few people at the ploughing who came to us with that issue for various reasons, and we were able to withdraw it and re-enter the correct information. So again, you can contact us on the National Fertilisers DB at agriculture.gov.ie email address.
Great, thanks, Finbarr.
So to declare an actual closing stock where you do have some fertilizer on farm, you can click on closing stock again, and this time click on I declare I have closing stock, and then this will come up. So you can put in the product and the quantity, and then you click on this plus, so that if you need to put in a second one, you just keep going. And I suppose one of the issues that arose was people were putting in a product here and then declaring closing stock, and they had a second product to put in. So then they had already submitted, so they couldn't get back into the system to do that. So we had to withdraw it. And then, so it's this plus. Once you've entered details here, you click plus. That adds down here. You'll see it on the lower part of the screen. Put in your next product, plus, plus. And when you have everything you need in, then you click on declare closing stock, and you'll have a further yes to click after that to make sure it's gone in. So you see it there. So that's what you'll see below, what you've entered. And this is a sepulchre bag product. So that's a generic product. It's not linked to any company. Then you can add another product there, click the plus, and declare closing stock. And again, here, when you're clicking on this yes, you can see what's actually gone in here. Depending on the size of your screen, unfortunately, you can see 2 or 3, 4 products probably. So then you click yes on that, and then your products have gone in. I doubt if anyone has closing stock at this level, to be honest, but that's the numbers that were going in when we were testing it. And just this is the National Fertiliser Database stuff on our website. So there's a lot of information here. There's user guide videos, which are very useful, and there's also some screenshot guides that are down there as well. So those user guide videos, again, IT, Andrew Collins put them together for us, and they're quite useful. So that's it for me. I'm just going to play the closing stock video, Mark. It's only a couple of minutes, if I can.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Just let me find it here.
In this video, you will see how to submit a closing stock as a professional fertiliser end user or fertiliser economic operator to the National Fertiliser Database. After logging in to the National Fertiliser Database, for your business identifier, under Actions, click Closing Stock. The declaration date of closing stocks for professional fertiliser end users is the 14th of September at 23:59. For fertiliser economic operators, the declaration date of closing stocks is the 30th of September at 23:59. When you submit a closing stock, you must declare what products you have on your premises or under your control, including a nil declaration at that time. If you have no closing stock to declare, you should submit a nil declaration. Click the button to declare you have no closing stock, click Declare Closing Stock, and click Yes. If you have a closing stock to declare, click the button to declare you have a closing stock. In the Product column, type a product or scroll down to a product and select the product. Under Quantity, type in the quantity of the product in tons. To add this product, click the plus symbol. You can now see this product in the table below. You can edit this entry by clicking the Edit button and apply a change by clicking the green tick. You can also remove this product by clicking the Remove button. You can continue to add products in the same way. Make sure that you don't declare closing stock until you have added all products. Once you have submitted your declaration, you won't be able to change it. When you have added all of your products, click Declare Closing Stock and click Yes. You can now close the closing stock window. If you now click Actions and Closing Stock, you can view the closing stock that you have submitted to the National Fertiliser Database.
Okay, so that's it, Mark. Thank you very much.
Oh no, that's really useful. So that was a really useful presentation, and look, as you said, there's huge response from the farming community so far. With is it 111,000 of the 130,000 odd herd numbers that are registered? So that really is a testament to the farmers, but also I think the simplicity of the system as well. I think it's I have gone in and had a look at it myself, and it's a pretty straightforward process. So for anyone who hasn't done it yet, it's nothing to be too daunted by. Or I suppose the advice would be to talk to your agricultural advisor if you are running into any issues there, or if it's something you're not comfortable doing with yourself. Finbarr, just in terms of running into next year, then the purchasing process. So when a farmer goes in to purchase fertilizer next year, what happens? What are the chain of events there when that's being done next year?
Yeah, so all the farmer has to do is provide their herd number, and then that'll be used to track that sale on the system. So the co-op or the merchant will record that information under their herd number, and then when they're uploading that data, that's how it'll be accepted into our system under that unique identifier, which in the case of farmers is their herd number.
Okay, so all of that information then is automatically transferred across to the Department of Agriculture then afterwards.
Yeah, the merchant is responsible for uploading that information onto the system, so either manually or through the API system.
Okay, very good. Are there any sort of issues there with information, data protection, and so on, or how does that work? I know some farmers can be concerned about their information being shared between systems and so forth. That presumably that information has been, or that agreement is in place for that information sharing.
Yeah, that's part of the legislation, so that's allowed for under the legislation that was put through in July. Yeah, so that's not an issue. And I suppose to say as well that I suppose the information, farmers can see their own information on the system. So if they have any issues with the information that's in there, they can contact us if they think there's something not quite right. But also any information that's shared with anybody will have to comply with all the data protection rules that are in place. So that's part of the legislation as well, in that any data sharing would have to comply with data sharing rules. And I suppose for our part, really what you're sharing here is nutrient data, the NPK, well, NMP for the most part, with other people. Generally speaking, we share data at the moment with the EPA. this should be more accurate data. So it should be a positive thing for the farming community in terms of emissions and climate aspects. So that's the hope anyway, that would be better data, more accurate data, and hopefully slightly lower values on it.
Finbarr, just
Finbarr,
in relation to that, when you say you share data with the EPA, but presumably it's not on a farmer by farmer basis, it's on a database basis.
This is, it's entire numbers. I tell you, what we're sharing with them at the moment is what's imported into the country. So we would share that entire data. There's no regional data. There's nothing like that. So it would be the total N and total P for the country. I suppose the one advantage of this system, and I know we have some generics in there, but where we have specific products, we can pull out the different types of nitrogen, which lead to different emissions profiles. So over time, we'd hope to have a far more accurate numbers on that. But yeah, you're right. It's whole country data is being shared.
Yeah. And there was a question in here as to whether the data would be open source. I would be fair to say that statistics from the data will be published, but the data itself is very unlikely to be open source.
No, it's definitely won't be open source. No, certainly not. I mean, I suppose the data sharing, you'd have to have a formal data sharing agreement to share any data. And within that, you would have to make a very strong argument as to why you'd need anything more specific than the NP for the entire country, just the nutrient data.
And just to clarify, so an example which I suppose is talked about a little bit is the potential, say, for the AgNav product, which is looking at individual emissions on a system provided by Teagasc and some partners, but that would be subject to farmers given their individual permission to have that data used.
Yeah, farmers would have to tick a box to say they're happy for the data to be used within that. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that clarifies that quite well.
Yeah, no, it's really, really important to clarify that for sure. Finbarr, so for in terms of fertilizer use so far this year, have we any sort of indicative figures that have been published by the department about fertilizer use in Ireland, in particular nitrogen? Because of course this is a figure we're closely watching from a nitrogen from a climate change perspective.
Yeah, and the numbers are still down. I suppose the numbers are down on last year by, I think it's about 15%. And obviously last year was an unusual year where the values were low anyway. But you see, this is another thing with the database. When we start the year, we have no idea what kind of stock is in co-ops or what kind of stock is on farm. Now, you know, the information we have on imports will flush through the system. So over the course of a few years, it if you average it, it's probably pretty spot on. But yeah, definitely the numbers are down this year again. Now we don't have the full numbers for the year as yet, because obviously we're in September. But I think anecdotally, it seems to be that it'll be down probably between 10 and 15%. That's what it looks like.
Okay. And just finally, from my own perspective, for somebody who decides not to engage with this, what are the consequences?
Well, you won't be able to buy fertilizer. It's a legal requirement that you're registered on the system. So I suppose, I think, to be fair, suppliers are talking to their customers to say, you need to be registered or we can't sell you product. So that is a thing. And I suppose we would say, and I've spoken about it already, if there are individuals who need a paper application, I suppose, for want of a better word, on this, then they just need to contact us. We don't want people worrying unnecessarily about this. But as you say yourself, if you've got a computer and you're using ag food for other things, or your agent is, it has been designed to be as simple as possible, to be fair, particularly for the farmer. But like I said, we don't want people worrying. If they contact us, we can work through any issues they're having with getting set up on the system before they start buying again. But there is it makes life awkward for everybody. I think we have a period now before next spring to get everyone in on the system, and then there's no hassle when it comes to buying fertilizer next spring.
Yeah, so there's a bedding in period there. Okay,
A lot of
we're
quick
getting
fire,
a huge amount
hopefully
of
be
questions
quick fire
coming through here.
questions.
Yes,
All right.
So look, it's really good that we actually had that time now to go through these questions, because there's some really good questions coming through. So and I know, Finbarr, you've given a commitment, if we don't get a chance to get through everything, that we'll send on those questions to you, and might do some sort of an FAQ or something like that to address them. So Pat,
I suppose a question here in relation to registering products in the database. If the product is not in at the cutoff, will there be an opportunity to add products on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, that is the case. So I suppose and companies have been sending products. Even some of the bigger guys who sent me stuff last April, they have sent me updates. So even as we speak, there's an update a week is going to be going on at the moment. And we, like I said, we have the bulk or bag options for things. If you can't find a specific product, there should be an option under that that will suffice. But yeah, certainly we envisage that we'll be updating the product list fairly regularly. Certainly between now and the end of the year, there'll be a lot more going in. And then after that, if there's new products coming onto the system, they can just be sent in to the National Fertilisers DB at agriculture.gov.ie email address, and then they'll be added. IT
and
will set that
I
up.
think it kind of answers the question here, just putting in the fertilizer manufacturer matter. So if you had a company A 10-10-20 versus a generic 10-10-20, it doesn't make a huge difference. It's better to get it right, but it's not of major consequence if you don't. Is that fair?
Yeah, you can put the whole lot in under the bulk or bag 10-10-20. So if you've got 3 tons of one and 4 tons of the other, you can put in 7 tons of the bulk or bag 10-10-20.
A question there: how will fertilizer brought in from Northern Ireland be dealt with or accounted for next year?
So that will need to be entered into the system by the importer. So if a farmer is bringing it in, he has 3 days to enter that information through Ag Food onto the system, and it's the same for merchants importing. And we do have, I think we have a few already on the system. Actually, there's I think 27 or 30 transactions gone in, and some of those are Northern Ireland.
Do we have
liquid, sorry, Mark.
Just there was a question here in relation to that not all merchants are signed up to the API, and what's the process there? Was the understanding that the merchant would register fertilizer purchases? Then is there a manual way to do that, or how does that work?
Yeah, the Ag Food they can go in and manually enter information in the Ag Food, pretty similar to the way it's brought up for farmers there for recording information on their products, say farm to farm transfer or the import. So yeah, they will have a manual option, and then there's the API as well. And I think some companies, from talking to them, they're going to manually enter for now, and then make a decision as to whether they want to sign up for the API. But there's quite a lot of companies are involved in testing the API at the moment, to be fair. So it makes life easier in the long run, I think. But it's a decision to be made by each individual company, I suppose.
Right.
Question there: where liquid fertilizer is purchased, is there a conversion for litres to kilograms of product?
The liquid fertilizer, everything is in kgs, or everything is in tons, sorry, on the system. So we don't have a converter for that at the moment. I know some of the companies had put in they deal in weight anyway.
Right.
A lot of the companies, but there may be some that it's there's some of the products that did come in are weight for volume. So it's just to be aware of that. That's all, because some of these liquid fertilizers are they have a density of 1.2. Which means that you need to do it in weight, otherwise you're under declaring that information. Yeah.
So just in terms of the scope and the type, other than our main compound fertilizers, a number of questions about lime, about products which are just micronutrients, whether they need to be registered and go in. Derived organic fertilizers, where they're fertilizers that are created from organic sources. So you might deal with if you want the scope of what has to be registered and what has to go in.
Yeah, we were essentially looking at products containing NPK. Like I said earlier, we have some information from companies with the NPK products, which include sulfur as well, or sodium, or different things. The organics we're not covering. Lime, there are liming products, granular liming products that are included in the system as well. And ground limestone is the main one that'll be covering that. That's the big one on that. The micronutrients only, we're not including that for now either. I would say that the other thing to remember is domestic products. Under the legislation, products are guys using, just using domestically as opposed to professionally. That's not covered under the system. So those domestic use products wouldn't be covered either. There are professional use products, and there's a lot of information on products for golf courses and stuff that's gone in, but not all of it has gone in as yet, and that's why we'll be building that catalogue over the coming year or two, I'd say, to be honest.
Well, this legislation applies not just to farmers; it's also the amenity sector and horticultural sector. If you mention golf courses there,
yeah, amenity as well. Anyone who uses it in the course of their professional work, I suppose. So landscapers, and I suppose the other thing, and the reasoning for this is that we have a full picture of what's there in terms of what's used in sports clubs, any sporting organization that uses fertilizer. And I suppose they'll be trying to buy fertilizer. They'll need to be registered on the system. And I think the golf courses, the vast majority of them have registered already. There's a few GAA clubs and stuff in there as well. So they'll need to be registered as well. Yeah.
There's a question from an advisor here, Finbarr, about some issue he was saying with the system that if an agent has registered a farmer for the fertilizer register, the farmer can now not enter their own closing stock. This has to be done by the agent as they register the farmer. Is that still an issue?
Yeah, I think that's not so much an issue with the National Fertiliser Database as it is with permissions on ag food, I suppose. So that's just a question of whether the farmer should have permissions to look at all of this on ag food. So that's one that can be followed up, certainly. But that's my understanding, that the farmer should have access there. And I don't know whether historically the permissions were handed over to the agent and it was left at that and no one really worried about it. But the farmer, as far as I know, but like I said, it's more of an ag food issue as to whether they should have those permissions as well.
Yeah. So maybe that's something that maybe need to work with that section on to resolve that, because it would make sense that there's certain elements that farmers should be able to do for themselves, even though the agent is doing some of the maybe the bigger tasks on the system. So I think it's a fair question.
Yeah, and just to say, we do have an FAQ up on that website as well, and any of the questions that come out of today that need to get added to that, they will be added in the coming week or so.
I suppose a couple of questions there around whether, if a farmer doesn't register, will eventually it be considered a zero open stock, or will he be considered not properly registered? Or sorry, if he doesn't register his inventory, will it be considered a zero, or will he be considered not to be properly registered and potentially not be able to buy fertilizer into the future?
Yeah, no, he needs to be, the buying, once he's registered, he'll be able to buy, but the declaration of closing stock, we'll have cited that through the system. So we will be contacting guys to remind them that even if they have no stock on farm, they need to interact with the system and declare that they have no stock. So that's, and I suppose if there is someone from the department out on farm and there's stock on farm and it hasn't been declared, they'll just be advised to declare it. But like I said, it makes life easier for everybody if people register and stock is declared, then no one has to worry about anything.
A question there in relation to the department using the fertilizer database information when doing individual nitrate or conditionality farm inspections. And I suppose allied to that, in the past, farmers had to, irrigation farmers and farmers with inspections had to supply data on fertilizer use. Will that replace it? And will that data be used for inspection purposes?
Yeah, the data will be used, but I suppose the systems that are in place, there's paper systems in place at the moment. My understanding is that they'll continue for next year. You might want to get Ted on in a few weeks to discuss this one, but yeah, in time the database will replace that. And as for inspections on farm, yes, that data from the database will be used. Yeah.
Question in relation to a farmer with two herd numbers, either, I suppose, genuinely two different herds, or two herd numbers, one which may be dormant. In the case of two different herds, will the farmer supply one and be responsible to shift within his own accounts, or what? How will that be handled?
Well, he is. I suppose there's two options there. You can buy using either herd number or both. So he can do it that way, or he can buy it all under one herd number, and then, as you say, just transfer what was used on the second farm himself through the system. So the farm to farm transfer option.
Pelleted organic manures, which are chemically formulated, such as chicken manure pellets, how will these be accounted for?
Yeah, they're not covered in this system either.
Okay, so they're considered organic imports then, I presume, are they? Finbarr, how's that handled?
I'm not sure actually how that is handled, but it's not. We're more worried about the chemical fertilizer side of things than emissions, to be honest. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's. I'm not sure how that's covered. I know there's a system for slurry, fair enough, but the chicken litter stuff, I'm not sure how that's accounted for.
We have some contractors out there, Finbarr, that are providing a full package to farmers. The sale and spreading of fertilizer in one go. If the contractor buys the fertilizer and then charges the farmer, what should they do, or how is that accountancy managed?
Yeah, I suppose they need to be set up as a fertilizer economic operator on the system. So they get supplied by someone else, that goes into their account, and then if they're set up as a fertilizer economic operator, they can sell on to the farmer. We're not interested really in the invoicing or the money side of things. We're really only interested in the dispatch, or when he spread what on the farm. So that's the information we'd be interested in there. And I suppose there's another one there whereby a contractor is simply spreading, and the farmer buys directly from the co-op. Then that's a different situation, obviously, and that contractor doesn't necessarily have to be set up as a fertilizer economic operator.
If a farmer,
there are a couple of questions coming in, and I suppose getting a little bit forward looking in terms of the information that would be available to farmers, and I suppose additional functionality that might be there. One question is will a farmer be able to put in his N&P allowances on the fertilizer register and be able to then track his usage against that on an ongoing basis?
No, this will simply record, transfer product to the farm. There's nothing else in there. I mean, you can keep an eye, and I suppose there will be data there. As I said, you'll be a few weeks behind, but they will have data, should be uploaded by their supplier by the 15th of every month. So they will have that data and any information they have on what they've bought in the meantime or what they've spread. But this is about what's transferred onto the farm. So I suppose really from our own perspective, we get an opening stock this year. We have a record of all the sales to a farm and a closing stock next year. So we won't have a full picture until the end of this time next year, essentially. It'll be, and I suppose to say that the 15th of October is the deadline for declaring closing stock. So it'll be after that date before we'll have a full picture of what's going on with farmers. And if we have, we'll be able to pull reports on that. But those reports probably won't be available until October of next year.
And I suppose given the lags of time of data input into the system, if I'm correct, a merchant has until the 15th of the following month to enter the data. So it means that depending on how the merchant reacts with the system, data for a farmer may not be up to date if they go in and looking at their own data on an ongoing basis. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, that's correct. I suppose just to say that we have had some people who are entering information daily by hand on the system. They won't let it build up. So, and I think even if you're set up on the API, you can set that to go in every day. I suppose the caveat is that when we spoke to businesses about this, they do their own kind of reconciliation of accounts at the end of every month. So the argument is that, you know, they'll have done that anyway. And then they'll have some time to correct and update that information so that what we're getting into the system is very accurate information, and there'll be very little back and forth to change any issues. Whereas if we force guys to put in the information too quickly, we'll end up with a whole lot of work in trying to correct issues. So I suppose that was an ask from the companies, that they have their own systems that they do monthly anyway. So, you know, it works for them, and I think it works. It's okay anyway, to be a couple of weeks behind. It's very difficult. I mean, this was never going to be a live system. It's very difficult to get to that point. I don't know if we'll ever get to that point, but maybe technology will help us in future on that one. I don't know.
Do organic farmers have to register?
Organic farmers have to register if they're using fertilizer or lime. But if they're not intending to purchase fertilizer or lime, then they don't have to.
And presumably the same process applies. We talk about herd number, but it could be a flock number or a tillage number in there either.
Yeah, it's whatever number is on their, you know, whatever number they use when the department is identifying them for payments or whatever it might be. It's that number. I know we use the generic term herd number, but yeah, there's there's other names on it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you've clarified this one, but probably no harm to do it again. If a farmer forward buys in August and receives delivery in December, does he have to do anything at this point?
No, not at all. The farmer doesn't have anything. I'm assuming that farmer has nothing on farm at the moment. Let's say that. Then they do have to declare before the 15th of October that they have no closing stock on farm, or declare whatever they do have on farm. The December thing, even if they've bought and paid for it in August, if it's delivered in September, that's when the merchant will put it up on the system, so the farmer doesn't have to worry about that.
And presumably, I was working on an assumption there that they on a farmer's ag food, when the data does come in, it will appear on, and farmers will be able to look at their purchases on ag food once that data has come in.
Yeah, you can go in and it'll come up on screen. It's just we're still working on reports that they'll be able to download at the end of the year. But the reports are kind of meaningless until we have the full year's data anyway, I suppose. So they will be worked on. And like I said, IT have done a good job to date on making this system simple. So we'd hope that that system of downloading reports would be very straightforward as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And look, ideal would be to have it on a monthly sync or something like that, or even a daily sync, dare I say it. The good question here in relation to derogation farmers, at the moment they have to provide fertilizer accounts annually. But do you envisage a future where that won't be required, given that this information is going to be collected automatically?
Again, I don't like answering for nitrates on these things, but I think it does make sense that this would take over, and it would make a farmer's life easier in the long run in that respect, that they don't have to worry about paper copies of everything. And as you say, Pat, they can go through and they can look during the year, they can see on screen what's credited to their account. Now, like I said, I suppose anything like this, you will have teething problems. So we would always say that the old system stays in place, certainly for the next 12 months. And then there'll be communication, I'm sure, from nitrates as to where we go from there, and whether we're happy with the system after that.
Okay. And a question here from a non-farmer professional end user. How do they get set up on this system if they don't have a herd number?
Ah, okay. Sorry. I've just been informed that our declaration of closing stock for this year is going to be used by nitrates
Okay.
division. So yeah, sorry about that. Someone interrupted me. Sorry, I missed that question now, Mark.
No, you're fine. No, it's good to get this live updates by the sounds of it. If a question really was from a non-farmer who doesn't have an ag food account, how do they fill out an application form, or how can they access? Is there an online version for them?
Yeah, there's an online application form, so they can print that out, fill it in. They send it in to us. We then give them a unique number, and then there's a further form that we will send out, and someone will ring them. One of the lads upstairs will ring and talk them through what's necessary after that, because there's a further step for IT security. So there's a single sign-on form that has to be filled out. That has to be posted back into IT. And then they'll get you set up on Ag Food, and you'll get your credentials for that afterwards.
The question here is the fertilizer database an EU requirement or just an Irish requirement?
It's an Irish requirement, but it's something that I think the Commission is in agreement with. So essentially, anyone who wanted to maintain a derogation would have had to set up something like this in order to maintain that derogation. Again, this is more nitrates than me, but that would be my understanding. And I suppose this was considered, a good way of tracking fertilizer and having it for the various different environmental needs, and also for the derogation. So it is something that I think when they had asked the Dutch to set up something similar if they wanted to maintain their derogation. That's my understanding.
Question there is municipal sludge or dairy sludges do they come under the realms of the regulation?
It's really fertilizer and lime only, I think is the message we're hearing this morning. Seems to be an issue where farmer declares a closing stock is not appearing on the agent's screen. Again, that could be back related to that ag food issue that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, that's a strange one though. I haven't heard that one now. I've heard it kind of the other way around, but not that way around. But I think it may be due to the access on ag food and what they have and what they don't have. So that can be looked into, certainly.
A few questions coming in again about those smaller businesses or suppliers, co-ops with no IT systems. And you've already said that it's up to them to manually reconcile or upload that information to the department. I suppose that this person is concerned that how will that happen, or if those small businesses aren't equipped with IT systems.
Yeah, no, it's there is a facility on Ag Food to do that. I'm not sure a business with no IT whatsoever.
Well,
like this can be done on a phone as well. Yeah, no, there are options for doing it. Once they're registered. And once they're registered on the system, they fill out the application form and they're registered with us, then they're free to trade with their suppliers and their customers. And I suppose if there's further issues beyond that, then they can contact us and we'll figure something out.
One of the things that I suspect you were quite busy at the ploughing, just answering questions and providing support to farmers. Am I correct? I think I heard it said that there may be a number of clinics set up to assist in getting people registered. Am I right on that?
It's something that's being discussed, I would say. I'm not sure there's a definite decision on it. I think we're working through fairly well, but there will be paper forms certainly for people who do have issues with the access. The clinics, if necessary, yes, they will happen, but it's a discussion that's ongoing. And I suppose we're fairly optimistic with the numbers at present, with a couple of weeks left to go, that we'll get pretty close. But there are certain farmers that will need more assistance, and it's just a matter of how we provide that. That's all. But we will be sending paper copies of the application out to people if necessary, if they contact us, and I think we've done some of that already. And then if there's a need for a clinic down the line, I think that'll happen as well.
Just a question in relation to, again, liquid nitrogen and some of the inhibitors that are used in liquid nitrogen. Will they be credited as reduced emissions nitrogen?
Yeah, I think we have. There's some of these products that can only be added to the tank as you're about to spray. So we have companies have come to us, so some of those inhibitors are actually in the system, so they will be recorded, and then there will be a closing stock recorded, so we'll see what was used, and we'll have to allocate credit for that in that way.
Okay. Is there any I suppose inkling, I wouldn't say a plan at this stage, to use the data to provide reports to farmers on how safe and their fertilizer product is, and I mean safe from an environmental perspective in terms of emissions of ammonia, emissions of greenhouse gases or nitrous oxide. I mean, the data is clearly available. It's something, I suppose, that we're trying to get farmers to move over to products that have lower emissions. Will there be I suppose explicit data and on the reports that farmers get in relation to how they're faring in relation to achieving those reductions?
Yeah, I suppose at present we'd be looking at overall figures, and as I said, because we've got some of the generic products, it's sometimes difficult to get very accurate figures on that, but it's certainly something that could be looked at, but there's no plans for it as such at the moment. And I suppose to say, once farmers keep within the limits that are allocated, there is no issue from an environmental perspective. I suppose that would be the line we take on that. So but certainly it's something for the future that would be interesting, maybe even to do it with the Signpost farmers or something, to see where it's at.
Well, I'll be provocative here and say that we should be focusing on the level of losses as opposed to the level of use. I think it's we have focused always on the level of use, and I think we really need to focus on the level of losses.
Yeah,
I shouldn't be saying things like that.
I think the nutrient use efficiency is in fairness hugely pushed by Teagasc at the moment, and the department is happy with that. And I mean, that is a very important point to make, to be fair.
Yeah. Look, we're just over the half past, but just two final questions. Just Finbarr, one question coming through quite a bit. What will happen to farmers who do not submit a return by the 15th of October? What are the consequences?
Again, like I said, it makes life easier for everybody if it is submitted in the next 2 weeks. If some farmers may have particular reasons for not being able to do it, just technical reasons, and in that case, they should contact us and just let us know, and we'll try and work through it with them. I suppose it's something that just makes it awkward. And if there's, as I said, if there's someone out on farm and there is stock there and it hasn't been declared, it's not ideal, put it that way. But there are provisions in the legislation, but we don't want to go down that road too early on this now. Yeah. But it's just better if everyone complies. It is a legislative requirement to enter that information.
Okay, well, look, it sounds like you're taking a very pragmatic approach to it, given that this is a very new initiative for people to get their heads around, both farmers and advisors and the wider industry. So look, that is appreciated. Finbarr, thanks so much for joining us today. That was a really useful presentation, and what we might do is we'll copy down some of the questions, or all of the questions that came through, and if some of those aren't answered on your FAQ, perhaps you could add those to your FAQ on the system on your own website. And there are really good support videos there for people. If they go to the Department of Agriculture website, all of that information is available, and advisors as well are there to support farmers through this transition as well. So look, again, thanks for your time today. And Pat, thanks for helping out with the questions. A lot of questions coming in, so obviously this is a really hot topic. Sorry, Finbarr, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, just to say thanks to you for giving us the opportunity to get our messages out there, because I think this is a very useful forum, and it is it's great for us to get on and get the message out. And also, the questions you'll send on to us will be included in the FAQ, and it'll inform what kind of issues are out there for people. So that's important as well, so that we can start to deal with those.
Great stuff. So just to let everyone know that next week we will be hearing about the National Farm Survey Sustainability Report. That'll be launched next Friday, and we'll be joined by Professor Frank O'Mara, Director of Teagasc, Dr. Cathal Buckley, who is leading the NFS Sustainability Report, Simon Leach also. And this is going to be a 1.5 hour special to really tease out some of the figures that are coming through from how Irish agriculture is performing from a sustainability perspective. So do tune in for that 1.5 hour special. And this is forming part of an overall month of sustainability initiatives from Teagasc, because it is National Sustainability Month. And to find out more about all of the events and activities that are happening during the month, please do log on to the Teagasc website, where you can find out all the details. And there is bound to be an event near you, because there's a significant amount of face-to-face events happening across the country, as well as webinars and podcasts, and pretty much anything you're relating to sustainability you're going to hear about over the next month or so. So do join and tune into that. So final thanks to Mary O'Loughlin for helping out in the background today, and Yvonne Maher on the production side. And until next week, I hope you have a lovely weekend and a good week ahead. So we'll see you next Friday. Thanks again.
You've been listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, the weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. Don't forget to join us live every Friday morning for our latest webinar. For more, visit teagasc.ie. And you can also rate, review, and subscribe to the Signpost Series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Mark Gibson, and thanks for listening.